After a while, what was happening was there was me at Vasant Valley School during the day, going to Tihar in the afternoon. And at night, I ran a night school for the coolies at INA Market.
You started a night school for the coolies at
the
INA. And for 4 years running, thanks to Arun Kapur, we did quizzes in Tihar Jail, and the sense of participation was fantastic. His work has left an indelible mark on generations of students, teachers, and communities. He happened to have been the founder director of Vasant Valley, where both my children, son and daughter, studied. And of course, with generations of students, he has the reputation of being a Dumbledore. A very approachable, adorable Dumbledore figure.
I think somewhere along the line in the Doon School, learning became important. For me, the shift came that teaching was not it. Teaching was not it. It has to be learning. And then if you went into a classroom to teach, you had already lost it, because you could go and teach for 2 hours and nobody learns anything.
Welcome to another episode of Quizzitok, where we chat about the transformative power of education, curiosity, and lifelong learning. I'm your host, Siddhartha Basu, and today we are honored to have an extraordinary guest with us, who happens to be a good friend too, an educationist whose name is synonymous with innovation and impact in the field of education in India and Bhutan too. A teacher, a mentor, a thought leader, and a champion of holistic learning. Please join me in welcoming Arun Kapur. Hi, Arun.
It's a great pleasure to be here. The thing is that when Babu Basu says, come here at early in the morning, you just early.
And I'm delighted and so obliged that you've actually shown up. But there's lots that we have to learn from you, lots we want to talk to you about, and thank you very much for having joined us. Arun was a batchmate at St. Stephen's College way back in the early 70s, and his work has left an indelible mark on generations of students, teachers, and communities. He happened to have been the founder director of Vasant Valley, where both my children, son and daughter, studied. And of course, with generations of students, he has the reputation of being a Dumbledore. A very approachable, adorable Dumbledore figure that he's been at the schools. And I remember the first time my daughter went to school, you were a bit apprehensive. It was supposed to be a kind of selection or whatever. Arun held out his finger, she held on to it, and he just led her into the room, and that was Tata bye-bye to us, and took them over. So they've grown up with him, as have so many other students. Arun, from your early days as a teacher to founding initiatives in both public and private education, now leading groundbreaking education reforms in Bhutan, your story is really inspiring, though you act as if it's just a matter of course. Let's start at the very beginning. How did your early life, interests, and people around you shape your views in education, leadership, and learning?
So I grew up in the eastern part of India, in Bihar and Bengal and Orissa and small towns. And I think the kind of life, those, late 50s, early 60s, was a whole different kind of bringing up. I've got 5 sisters, amazing, amazing, amazing people. My parents, big influence on my life. And my grandparents, my father's parents, I spent much more time with them than I did with my mother's parents. My mother's father was a professor of mathematics and the principal of a college in Srinagar, SP College. And her grandfather was a professor of physics.
So there's some educational antecedents there.
I didn't grow up with them. These are things that I discovered later also. Now, of course, you connect the dots that they might have been there. But I was more into I grew up in a home which was full of music, lots of books. My parents read a lot. I found out later, actually, halfway through school, that something was different from me, because in school we had to write essays. I had to write 2 essays, one in my head saying what I wanted to say, and the other one on paper using words that I could spell. For me, writing was a bit of an issue because I'm fully dyslexic. I have ADHD. So when I was in Vasant Valley School, the Shushmita Mitras of the world, they said, so for me,
What did they say?
they used to say things like, you're ADHD, and because that's where they were coming from. So it's just good for me. It was, that's who I am.
Yes.
Right? Spelling was, because I read so much, it never became a problem. And also grew up in a very open kind of home where there were always people there, all sorts of people, right? And so I think that made a big difference in who that we are part of this.
And all these different places you were in East, how come you traveled in those places? Your parents were
Yeah,
working in those
This is a
places?
very good question. So my parents are from what is today Pakistan, right? During partition took place. And before partition, my grandfather owned coal mines there.
Oh, is that right?
After partition, they came to the eastern part to get back into the coal side of life. And that's how we came to the eastern part.
All
And
right.
then my father and his father were doing things together. And then for some reason, my father went off to Rourkela to set up a petrol pump.
Oh, is that right?
So Burma Shell petrol pump. So there's a very kind of business hardcore, but I don't remember the petrol pump. I do remember it, but mostly I remember home with bridge playing, waltzing happening, and that's the kind of life.
Yeah, so very-
grew up very different from that situation. And then my father, in Rourkela, it was a steel plant set up by the Germans.
Yes.
They had a German club there where Indians were not allowed. So my father said, "What? We've just been through this whole independence thing." So he really fought with them and got membership and took
So
it
Indians were admitted into the
finally
club.
because of him.
Yeah.
And then they were always kind of finding a way to deal with this guy. So once he was playing billiard, and they said, "Oh, you nicked the cloth, so now you have to pay for it." So he left and he set up his own club. So that's the kind of background of you just do your own thing. If that's not working for you, you go and create a situation. So he set up which is still functioning, by the way, called the Brahmani Club in Rourkela, along the bend of the river.
Oh, the Brahmani Club.
The Brahmani Club.
Okay.
And that's where I grew up, in this place with deep verandas, and my sisters who were studying in Miranda House in
Later.
Delhi.
Yeah.
When they used to come, no, they were already
studying in
were-
college at that point.
The age difference is there. So when they would come for holidays, these bands would come from Calcutta and Chinese cooks would come from. So that's the kind of, and then my father lost it all because of relationships, because of something. And then we went down to about as low as you can financially. And what I learned early days was it did not make them bitter at all. That is one, if I look,
Big life lesson.
huge lesson. So there were times when, Bijli was cut because the payment hadn't been made or there was no food. So down to that level, from the situation of bringing in a Chinese cook for your situation to having no, but life was good, life was fun. My parents were always looking at as they say, the brighter side of life.
No,
Constantly.
So in terms of attitude, is something that made a big impact on you, obviously.
Yeah.
Before moving on to the next point, the books that you read, you spoke about reading a lot of books. Do you recall any of the kind of books?
Yeah, for some reason, my mother read a lot of Frank G. Slaughter. I think everything that Frank G. Slaughter wrote was there. My father, on the other hand, read everything that Perry Mason wrote. My father loved comics. So I just grew up, a lot of my friends' parents would say, comic nahi padna. And in my home, with my father, who was big in the comics. And so those were so there was P.G. Woodhouse, Perry Mason, Frank G. Slaughter.
I grew up with those two.
There you are.
All around. Yeah. And especially if they're visual comics. And that's one of the things we've tried to put into these general knowledge books that we do. We make it as visual as possible. Because I think it's not enough just to have text over there to figure, and you receive them and remember them differently and understand them differently. I made a difference. So you schooled across eastern India, as it were,
Right.
as a matter of fact. And then you came to Delhi, to St. Stephen's.
So I applied only to Sriram College to do BCom. And when the list came out, my name was not there. And I had embarrassingly high marks. But I obviously thought it was a
It was
mistake. But it was a rule that the university had that year that if you haven't done commerce in school, you can't do BCom honors. So they said, go to Hindu college. I went to Hindu college. They said, we can't do this, the same rule. So I said, and they were saying, we'll give you history or economics, whatever you want. So I said, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to go to St. Stephen's College, where members of my family had been earlier. So I walk in there and go to the window, and the person who I came to know later was Robert Saab, was there. And, this is where life takes on. He's standing and he's typing and he's talking to me like this.
Robert Saab being the sort of administrator person, a friend to everybody, a rotund, lovely, lovable guy who used to sit there. He was an institution at St. Stephen's College, mustachioed, bespectacled, and in his gruff way, he would be so helpful to everybody. Over to you.
So he's typing and I explained to him, he said, no, this is where he's like. So instead of continuing and saying, he turns around, puts his hand on the window, puts his head out and says, those guys sitting there, that's the history interview going on. There's nothing I can do. And in that split second, a guy called Pithu Singh, who's become like a very good Alvin Singh, he was the student on the interview panel. He walks out. If Robert Saab had continued sitting there, he wouldn't have seen that. He said, go talk to him. Maybe he can help you. So I went up to him and then he called and said, we'll try and get you into the interview. And then I went in for the interview. They just kind of battered me with all sorts of questions. And everything that they asked me was going to the boundary for either a 6 or a 4.
Yeah.
I was interested purely by luck. So this is one of the things in my early years, which of course I come to realize much, much later,
Right.
that things happen which are not necessarily always the best things for you, but they turn out to be really life changers. So for me, that has been a very big learning, that whatever happens is happening for a reason. You might not see it at that point in time, but live through it. And somewhere along the line, all these things will come back and add up to everything.
Well,
That's learning.
Another life lesson. I remember from college, we did some theater together. For you, how would you sum up your college years?
Just joy. Sheer joy. I had some amazing moments inside the classrooms, but most of them were outside the classroom with friends, people like you, Atahualpa, the Royal Hunt of the Star, and absolutely those kind of things, and then doing theater and music. Suddenly, I came from a small town. I came from a music background, but a different kind of music. Suddenly in college, every room you went to had a different genre of music in there.
Playing, yeah.
So if I have to put down my college days in those terms, it is this exposure to music, to fun, to friends, people
And
who are
diversity. Because people came from everywhere.
everywhere.
All over the country, different social strata,
And it
different
didn't matter.
backgrounds. It didn't matter.
Didn't matter at all. That was the wonderful part of growing up there at St. Stephen's College. It was just, I don't know, it was a universe which allowed you to grow and nobody judged you. So these are things you don't realize when you're living at that point in time, that you're not being judged. So when you do go somewhere along the line, then it's a whole different story. So looking back, what does college mean to you? It means a universe of joy and music and the mints and the scrambled egg. How can you talk about college without talking about the mints and the scrambled egg? So many years after I had finished college, this is just something that came back to me. I went to the cafe and I ate and I ordered, and it was tasting completely different. And I realized what had happened was that when I was in college, I could not afford to order 2 mints, 2 scrambled toast with butter and coffee all together. So you always compromise.
Few of us could.
So this time I had 2 mints on my plate, 2 scrambled with tomato, with butter, with toast. Toast with butter and coffee all at one go. And it was suddenly that you had made it, that you could do this. Yeah, so that's college. It was just fantastic. You had friends. They're still so much part of my life.
Indeed. Now, did you always know that you wanted to become an educator, or was it something you discovered along the way? What were some of the pivotal moments you think, then, later, before, or experiences that inspired you to pursue a career in teaching, and how your teaching philosophy evolved over time?
I no chance or desire to be a school teacher. It was never on my radar.
And I didn't want to be a quiz master. So
There you are. So
I didn't know I was going to do television either, for that matter.
So all good guys who do history at St. Stephen's College. Of course, I sat for the civil service exam.
Oh, you did?
Of course. So when you don't have a, I didn't. So there, but you didn't do history. So there you are. So I'd taken a Barsati and sharing it with Itiyavira Kaliwail El Abraham, Itti, and we sat for this exam. And one evening there was a knock on my door and opened, and there was Fat Chuck, Suhas Chakravarti, and Dilip Simian.
The lecturers.
They were the lecturers, and they had
Fabulous lecturers.
amazing
lecturers. Yeah.
and they were friends.
Yes, also.
So Dilip's father was the headmaster at the Doon School, Colonel Simian.
Right.
And the history teacher at the Doon School suddenly resigned in the middle of the term and left. Oh, so there was this. So Eric Simian rang up his son Dilip saying, I need a history teacher now. So these two met at the coffee house, and for whatever reason they could never explain to me, they thought of me. So they came at about 6 o'clock in the evening to my Barsati, and I said, are you nuts? I don't want to be a school teacher. They said, no, he'll give you enough. You finished your written exam, we'll give you enough time to study for the interview. Just go till they find a proper teacher for 3-4 months. They put me on a 10:30 bus that night. So
That's how it happened?
That's how it happened.
Happenstance.
So I went there, and then the life became, and the interview happened, and the results came out. But that time I had fallen in love with teaching, and I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So it was not something that I was inspired to do or anything like that. It's just, again, this is the context in which we live. Things happen. Everything is in relationship with everybody. The good point of this story is the guy who resigned at that point of time, if he'd resigned a month earlier, it would have been too close to the exam. I couldn't have gone. A month later, he resigned suddenly in the middle and went. Where did he go? He went to Bhutan. So it's because of Bhutan that I became a school teacher, which I had no idea. I'm now in Bhutan. I live there, been there for 10, 12 years, and I hope I would be there for a longer time. So this is what life is all about. So, when they talk about the butterfly flapping its wings in the outside of somewhere and something happened. So this guy resigns here, goes off to Bhutan, becomes the principal of the White. So in Bhutan, YHS school is anybody from YHS school, I throw rose petals. because of that school and because of Adi Singh resigning and going, that here I am.
Did you ever ask Dilip Simian or Suhas Chakravarti why they picked on you? Was it the personality? I think it may have a lot to do with it.
I have no idea. I've asked Suhas, Dilip I asked once, and he said, no, it was Suhas. Suhas, and Suhas, you know how he was. And he gave me some lecture on Suhas. Miss Perchav, he's got a really
direct answer.
Never. I don't think they also do. I think there's just a name that came along, Moose or whatever it was.
So that's how you became a history teacher at Doon School and went on to become housemaster too along the way.
Yeah.
How long were you there?
So I was there for about 13 years. So, 13 of my really, really happy. But my problem is that whenever I look back at something, those were my happy years. When I look at Vasant Valley School, those were my happy. And I look at Bhutan now and say, so everything for me, it's just been one of my things. And this is again from my parents, the next day is even better than what you had yesterday.
And make the most of what you have and enjoy it to the fullest extent possible. So I can imagine. And I remember visiting Doon School with a production of Hamlet.
That's right. The Rose Bowl you performed.
In the Rose Bowl, absolutely. And what a marvelous setting and a performance. Occasionally I visited after that Ajay Banerjee, who was a mastermind, who I think you would have known as the maths master.
Doon School, the whole story of Doon School, how it's then abandoned. Forest Research Institute had been abandoned, and then C.R. Das came and found it and set it up in 19 whatever. You walk on the campus, history speaks to you. Because it goes back, God knows when. Before the Doon School it lived. And then you see a building which says insectorium or something like that, because it's the research institute. And the kids are from all over. And at least when I was there, it wasn't just North India, but there were kids from Assam and Bengal and Chennai and Bombay and Gujarat and of course UP. And so that again was a little, so what happened to me was, I'm coming from St. Stephen's College. Normally, Doon School students come to St. Stephen's College. They're one of the few people who went from St. Stephen's College to Doon School. And there were a lot of people in college who were good friends of mine, whose younger brothers were still in school. And there was a different connect there, So a lot of my close buddies still now are from friends of mine from students of mine from Doon School. They're friends now. So it was a wonderful situation.
No, it's an institution with one hell of a history and character, and of course,
It's fantastic. I think
and regarded as an elite public school, the most one of the most outstanding, certainly for its time. In terms of teaching, did anything happen there? Were you
Yeah.
allowed that space to
that's what I was
find your feet?
Yeah. So the fact was, I was reluctant or accidental school teacher. I arrived there. It was like being back in college. You got up in the morning, you went to some classes, you had some great fun because I was there for a while, But something happened, the relationship with the kids and midterm expeditions, a whole bunch of things was happening that we became part of the growing up and I learned a lot from the kids there. So it was a learning situation. I think somewhere along the line in the Doon School, I'm thinking about it while sitting and learning became important. For me, the shift came that teaching was not it. Teaching was not what it. It has to be learning. And then if you went into a classroom to teach, you had already lost it because you could go and teach for 2 hours and nobody learns anything. So the thing was to go in there to help them learn. And you couldn't do that if you were not in the learning mode yourself. So that for me became the big thing that worked over there. An opportunity to sit with kids and give them the space to learn. I set up something called the Historical Circle, which was an evening. Once a week, people would get together and talk about whatever they were passionate about. So giving them that platform to listen to them. And they took it very seriously. It became fairly serious. We became the Historical Circle. Essay came out of that. A whole bunch of things. Took kids to the Parliament, brought them to Delhi, Supreme Court. It was a journey of learning. And I'm still on that journey. So I'm really, really, starting from my St. Xavier's in Hazaribagh, where they gave us the freedom to go on cycles into the villages, to here at the Doon School, where we worked with Raphael or you work with the blind school. So a lot of the stuff was happening outside the classroom. Inside the classroom was also exciting stuff, that you gave them the opportunity to hear from them. What was it that they wanted to learn about or talk about, and what they had learned about these things. Yeah, so it was. Then I was teaching the modern governments in the Constitution of India. Uh, Fascinating, getting so. And what I see now is a lot of my students from that point of time are members of Parliament. Right, and they blame my class or governments for getting them
for
into
seeking that interest?
Yeah, reading. I got them to read a lot, so it was great. I mean, I think those 13 years. I got married when I was there. I had both my daughters were married at the Doon School. I got divorced when I was at Doon School. So I had like my whole microcosm of my life
Centered a lot on Doon School.
Just started off there with a pure, Fat Chucks and Dilip Simeon, and then I just was there for so long. And while I was there, I got the Charles Wallace Scholarship, went off to England, taught at Uppingham for a while with my... And that was the first time I left the country. I had never been out of the country. So my entire world was India.
Yes.
Right? So I was married, I had 2 kids. Then we went out to Uppingham, but first place I landed was in Amsterdam.
Okay.
The KLM, we spent that, and then we went to Paris. It was just fascinating. Landed in London, went to Uppingham. Yeah, it was. So it's from there that all these kind of things happen, and they are all ricochet. The ricochet is
a lot of the things that later you made your own and took much further in the sense of child-led development, learner-led learning. A lot of that began and germinated over there. Also, Doon School has a very illustrious alumni, people who passed on and gone on to do different things. But surely for a teacher, that must be one of the things which also must be a source of great satisfaction for you to see your students go on, flower, becoming individuals, doing different things in different fields. What does that feel like?
Amazing. The thing is that for me, that whole learning equation, so there were kids there, and there's a whole lot of people who have gone on to do wonderful things. Some have gone up to do nothing. But even in their doing nothing, there is something to learn. They are in the wildlife. I mean, that's one of the things that came from the Doon School, which I was very clear in when we were setting up Vasant Valley School. This whole canvas of what you can grow up to be, right? So from the Doon School, you obviously when you were studying at the Doon School, you had some kind of a background that you were there. You could afford the fees, but there were a whole bunch of people there who government scholars, right? Who had nothing behind them. But
Yes.
the one thing about the Doon School, I'm sure it's still there too, the mingling. You couldn't tell that this guy was a scholarship kid and that was not a scholarship kid. That was how they did it. It was beautifully done. And like you're saying, now they grew up to become a forest scientists, people in the army. They are now the inspiration. That's the beautiful
I can
thing.
imagine.
You can just look at saying, wow, you're doing this. And then you sit down and you listen to them. You get a completely different perspective on what you're trying to understand. So at the moment I'm trying to grappling with um, this whole quantum and quantum physics, and I'm doing some work on quantum learning, and the whole thing that you used the word a little while, the name, but I've got Nagarjuna, the philosopher Nagarjuna. So I am beginning to. I don't know enough about Nagarjuna, but I know that he's very central to quantum.
Yes.
So I've got one of my kids from Vasant Valley School who's researching on Nagarjuna and getting me to understand they are like sources of inspiration, and you have to reach out to them, figure out. At the moment in my house here in Gurgaon, I have kids from Bhutan. One of them is doing physics in St. Stephen's College, stays with me. Another guy wants to become an architect. He's doing an internship. So last night we were talking about, he's an artist. I mean, his paintings are phenomenal, right? So this is the source of inspiration is there. Your students are there. And then the people who you've been to.
Past, present, future.
All of them.
Your career has spanned some of the most prestigious schools in the country. There's Doon School, of course. You were principal at British School, and then you were the founder director of Vasant Valley. And you led it for 29 years.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Well, anybody who talks about anything about Vasant Valley School, is the centrality of Arun Puri and Rekha Puri is right there. I mean, they're just amazing people, right? They set up this buzz beehive, and they gave me free reign to do. I was 31, 32 years of age. I don't know. I mean, and that's another crazy story. If I can digress for a minute, that I was at the British school, and the British school, great school, wonderful. Didn't kind of
Do anything for you?
it was great. I took it from the O level to A level, all that I did, and I said, not for anything being wrong with that. It's just not a match. So I resigned.
Okay.
Right? I didn't have a job. I'll get a job somewhere along the line. Not that bad. So then somebody told me, why don't you go and meet Arun Puri on a Saturday morning? They're planning to set up a school. I said, no, they're planning to set up. Anyway, he said, go. So on a Saturday morning, I remember this very clearly. At about 11 o'clock, I go to their house. Rekha Puri is there. We start talking. Arun Puri comes down. I had kept in my mind about half an hour to meet with them and then move on. I found out later that Arun Puri had kept about 5 minutes. You're a busy guy. He does 35,000 things. So we were talking. Suddenly, from where the conversation became our school. And then Arun Puri sets up and let's go and have it. So he sits in the car, Rekha Puri and he and me in the back. We drive to Vasant Kunj. We spend 2-3 hours together. We go there and, they'd already got the architect, all our sorts of. And that's where there was no interview, there was no job offer, there was no salary. Because I was still at the British school, I had resigned. They'd asked me to stay on till they found. So that from there, every afternoon from British school, I'd come to this construction site. So I'm actually involved with the
Right from the foundation, bricks and mortar.
And we had, again, it was in Vasant Kunj. So the parents were from around. Again, this is where I think that the microcosm of India was there.
I think so, because I remember when we had just moved to Vasant Kunj, and the first thing that we learned was that it was initially, of course, the plan was it would be quite a neighborhood school. people would come from that area into service class and so on and so forth. That was the comfort level. And then it became my God. Look at the cars outside. It could have been a showroom in Dubai or anywhere like
Rubbish.
and the kind of people
You just blow.
that was something that happened along the way, maybe. But no, a school is much more than bricks and mortar. It's what happened with the students within. You always maintained a very small student to
teacher ratio.
Classroom
Still
was
is
limited to 25.
But also, we had some amazing teachers. We started off with about 13, 14 teachers.
It's also the atmosphere that you made for them. I think the space that you made for them, that the school made for them. The people
School made for them. I think also we kind of bounced off each other.
Yes.
Those first few teachers are still very dear friends of mine. A lot of people said, whatever. So we used to meet there very often. We should, all of us used to get together. We used to have a bonfire and dance and music. And music has been like for me everywhere. So we put in music, good food. I love, by the way, I cook a lot. Plugging my cooking. So I used to cook together.
Your hospitality is legendary. Is absolutely legendary. Has always been very big-hearted, and I think that carries through your colleagues, through your your students, to everybody around you. I think that's one of the things. So at school, you were saying that that's one
So
of the things.
what happened there was that people, my sister and brother-in-law, they make ad movies.
Okay.
So he's also from college, Suraj Rai in Pune.
Right.
So they made this movie called Campa Orange. We are all in together for the fun of it.
Yes.
That became our motto at Vasant Valley School. So when I was doing the whole preparation for the teachers before the kids came along, every staff meeting that we had, we started off with this. We are all in it together for the fun of it. So we sat down and we put down together all the teachers. It was just amazing. So what are the things that you didn't like about your school? So we put the whole, and she said, those are not going to happen here. What are the good things that you remember from your school days? All the teachers. So then that collection of what they loved and remembered from their school days became the heart of Vasant Valley School. So it started off with the love and infection and memory and affection from all these 12 teachers. And it became 22 teachers. And that was all we wanted them to bring, their happy memories of learning. Teaching was... So actually going back to whatever it was, that's the first time we talked about. They asked, what is different between Vasant Valley School and all the other schools? There's so many. So I said, here there's no teaching. There's only learning. So you go in, the teacher has to be in the learning mode herself. Otherwise, nothing happens. And this is going back 34, 35 years old. That whole ethos of... so the word pedagogy was never used because that's an art and science of teaching, which is great, it's wonderful, but we just wanted to make sure that learning, and we learned of each other, and those first parents, people like you, we learned so much from all of you, from the parents. It was a joint kind of journey for the next 28, 29 years. When I was at Vasant Valley School, after a while, other things, because I've now in Delhi, been here for a long time, doing this, that, and the other. I got a call one day from somebody saying, hey, listen, can you give us some books? We want to put some books into Tihar Jail. My God, that phone call, I don't remember who called me, changed my life. So I collected some books and they said they'll call me back and nobody called. So I then called up Tihar Jail. I said, listen, I have books for you. So sat in my car, took them there, got completely hooked. So this doctor who was the superintendent of jail number 5, he took me around and showed me, and so I said, how can I help? He said, you tell me how to help. So I set up a library there. And for many years, every day, from Vasant Valley School, I would go to Tihar Jail. Oh my God, how much have I learned from those kids? It changed that. If there's one thing that completely changed my thinking is my 10, 11 years of on a daily basis learning from those inmates.
Tihar Jail, young inmates.
Yeah, young inmates between the ages of 16 to 21.
I want to quickly jump in for a little sidelight, which is an interesting sidelight of all the different kind of quizzes that I've been associated with through these 40, 50 years. One of the most interesting ones and the most remarkable ones is something that Arun Kapur and his philanthropic organization Ritinjali, named after his 2 daughters, Ritika and Anjalika, sort of led to, which is he said, come and do a quiz at Tihar Jail. And for 4 years running, thanks to Arun Kapur, we did quizzes in Tihar Jail, and the sense of participation was fantastic. One of them, incidentally, was inter-ward, sort of, competition. But to meet the people there and find out the reasons for which they were there was an education, like you were saying. So I just visited the first time because we were then in Mumbai doing Convener Crorepati and other programs. But the first one we did with Gajraj Rao, who's become very famous as an actor, but he conducted it for us. They were jumping in their seats where they stood, and it was so interesting to do that quiz with those people. But to find out about them also was interesting. There was a Harvard kid who'd been nabbed with, I think, 10 grams of hashish or something like that at the airport, and he was spending his 6 months there. They were different kind of people, very cheerful, but then they really gained. So the reforms that they had begun at that time, I don't know what it's like at Tihar then, in terms of the library that you set up, Vipassana, meditation, different things. It was reformative, and that was one of the interesting things.
So Ritinjali, the word Ritinjali means helping hands. Okay, right? A combination of my daughter's names, Ritika and Anjalika. But good Punjabis call it Ritanjali. And Ritanjali means empty hands. So I mean, very carefully and Ritanjali, that's the beauty of our language. So I have to be very careful now. No, we are helping hands, we're not empty hands. So that's Ritinjali. And we do a whole bunch of things. We have learning centers in Maipalpur and Kusumpur Pahari. And through Ritinjali, we have worked out through the years, when there was a natural disaster, after the tsunami, the kind of work that we did outside of Pondicherry, after the earthquake in the Kutch, floods in Ladakh, Bihar. So all over the country, we have been, and the idea has been to go in there, not to create anything permanent. So you go in there, there's disaster, you put up like a school or a creche, so the people can leave their kids there and go along to rework their lives, so they know that the kids are safe. Then we, after a year, 2 years, we move away. Some of those little schools, creche, health are still running because we've moved away. We don't want to become like a permanent crutch in their lives. We want that helping hand, get them to stand. So that standing on their own feet is very, very, very clear. Getting everybody, whether they're in Vasant Valley School or in Tihar Jail or whatever, that has been the whole thing to get. And the other thing, which has been such an important aspect, is to bringing joy.
Yes.
Help people to stand on their own feet and find joy in their lives. After a while, what was happening was there was me at Vasant Valley School during the day. We do Tihar in the afternoon. And at night, I ran a night school for the coolies at INA.
You started a night school for the coolies at INA?
Yeah, it was again whole. See, these are all. So they were Vasant Valley School morning, Tihar Jail, same kind of age group, coolies at the INA market, especially with the coolies and the Tihar Jail, the socio-economic background was about the same. But one was in conflict with the law, one was not in conflict with the law. So when you say in conflict with the law in Tihar, there was this, because I was running the library, they would come there. But I remember once one kid came in and he used to take a book every day. So I thought, wow. I found out he didn't know how to read. But this was a place that he felt comfortable in, just rushing it through. He's from a small little village in Madhya Pradesh. And fairly often, one of these trucks would come and they would show movies, right? With the generator. Right. So that those days. So he used to keep seeing these movies, and there was this one thing that he said, I have to have this. It'll change my life, my family's life. So he left home, ran away from home to go into the big bad world to find this thing. And why is he in jail? Because he was traveling without a ticket. So he got caught. So when you get caught traveling without it, you give a fine. You don't have the fine, then you get 3 months jail. So it was there that I met him. And what was this thing that he was looking for? I mean, it just broke my heart. He had seen this thing called a refrigerator. Because in the movies or ads, when you see when you open it, it's full of food. They never show you an empty refrigerator.
Yeah.
So he said, this is what I need for my family. This machine. Every time you open it, there's food, there's magic food. So he had come looking for a refrigerator. It was my hard job to take him to the superintendent's office. When he emptied, and he saw there was a little refrigerator in the corner. His eyes lit up. And then I had to do the hard thing. I said, no, open it. And there were 2 Bisleri bottles only inside it. He was shattered. but it was important. But he worked with me.
It was a kind of Akshay Patra, where, it would always be unending food would be inside these.
Yeah. So those are the kind of things that changed me. Whether it was the INA market coolies, the Tihar students at Vasant Valley School, all these kind of things led to reinforcing my idea that learning is what it's all about. Forget teaching, because you learn from a whole bunch of other things. I mean, hats off to the Puris constantly for creating that space and, allowing me to be able to learn so much from them. And some of those kids, my God, fantastic. And some of the parents, fantastic.
While it was very empathetic and joyous from everything you've told us, all of these activities that you've done marked by an empathy and an openness and a very progressive, some would say permissive attitude to education, Vasant Valley has had a stellar record academically and in terms of achievement in all kinds of other areas. So that was something that you straddled at that point of time.
It was very deliberate. The thing was that it was necessary that if you're sitting in an exam system,
Yes.
then you jolly well do well in the exam. But how do you do well in an exam? At what cost? Do you give up everything else?
No.
And then just sit and do well? Because then you're lost. So the
Point of education is lost there.
so therefore, there was no dumbing down of expectations, because always everybody will rise to your level of expectation.
Yes.
So if you have low expectations from people, they will remain there. So that was one of the things that we were very clear, that going forward, we were going to constantly create a space where you strived for what you wanted. It was tough. Resilience was a very important aspect for you to learn. No shortcut from hard work. It was very clear for us that it was not just a school. It was a space for kids to grow up. And they're two different things. And also we realized very quickly that schooling had become an end in itself. Education. So the word education, that's why I wrote one of my first books I wrote about was leading out the true meaning of education. Because if you look at the word educo, it means to bring out from within you the best that there is. Right? So that is what we were all about. To help you bring out the best from you. And one of the best was the ability to work hard. Right? Not just fall down. We become a highly overrated, schooled society, but highly undereducated. So we're overschooled and undereducated. And that's the world over. It's got nothing to do
Only with India.
only with India. This is something that many people have said, from along. So I learned this also, that there is this whole aspect of education, much more than schooling, that we have to look at. And this then kind of led into, because of my interaction with the kids from the INA market and from the Tihar Jail and from Vasant Valley School, I realized that there has to be something else. So I set up, at that point in time, through Ritinjali that you mentioned, the NGO that I worked with, I set up something called the Second Chance School, which is still functioning for the last 25, 27 years. This is for kids who did not get the first chance. So the residential program runs here in Delhi. We're opening it up in many other places. So these kids started coming. We were first for the kids from the INA market and from the Tihar Jail. But then the word spread and we started getting kids from all over the country. So they stay with us. It's a residential program. They learn dharana, all sorts of things. We use the open schooling system for them to go up as much as they can so they can get that. They do internships. By 4 or 5 years or 6 years after we set up the Second Chance School, I remember this very clearly, when some of the graduates of the first, second, third batch came back to hire people from the Second Chance School. That full circle had happened. Now it's just gone into a whole different
That's
space.
very interesting initiatives. Also, you've been at the forefront of other initiatives like the Pallavan and Pallavanjali schools. And then, if you hop, skip and jump to the Royal Academy and your entire experience in Bhutan, what's been your guiding principle in these ventures? I want to focus a little bit on Bhutan.
Yeah.
But before that, tell us a little bit about Pallavan and Pallavanjali, and then we'll move on.
So Pallavan came along when it's a preschool. Started off as a preschool because I taught Doon School, age 13 and above. So first time when I came to the British school, that's the first time I was dealing with. When I was teaching in England, that was also a grade 7 to 12 kind of school, but that was co-educational.
Correct.
So first time there. Then I came to the British school, which started from junior years. So when we were setting up Vasant Valley School, it was a whole new learning for me. Because of my work with Tihar many years later, that's when I realized that I have to set up Pallavan. And Renu Kaul, who had been teaching at Vasant Valley School, she had resigned and gone off to Bombay, and then she came back. And I remember this sitting in Henry Ledley and Bhavna's house and Renu Kaul and talking about setting up this space for learning. So that's where Pallavan came along, which was going to be
A preschool.
early years.
Early years. Early.
The word school was we were trying not to use.
Correct.
Right, a
Correct.
space for them
Early
to learn,
Yeah.
to grow up. And there also we were in DLF. So the kids who came up from all these people, we also took in a whole 50% of our kids were rickshawala's kids. And that again was just the putting them together, right? And learning from each other. That was how Pallavan came along. So then it became bigger. So then I was also very clear in my mind that government schools are the answer. The rejuvenation of the government school system, putting up a few, elite shining spots is good. It's great. They have a space. But we need to. So that I was doing a lot of work with government school teachers here in Delhi government schools.
Right. And there's been quite radical developments, especially in Delhi government schools. It was great.
Yeah. So we did a lot of work there. Then I went off to Rajasthan and I did some work with the government school teachers there. Then I came to this little town called Jhalawar. And the only reason I came there was that town had a room big enough to hold the number of teachers that I was working with. And when I was there for 10, 15 days, 2 days, I realized that the people there, their aspirations for their kids was as high. So that's when I said to myself, hey, listen, you keep telling people to do something. Now you put your money where your mouth is. So I bought a piece of land and I set up a school. It's called Pallavan. It's a CBSE, whatever, KG to grade 12. It's got 1,000 kids. It's been there for 20 years. And
In Jhalawar?
In Jhalawar.
Oh.
Yeah, and those kids from there, Basu, those are the shining lights.
Really?
There's one girl whose father was a sapera, right? Because the sapera's thing was filling out from the
snake charmer.
snake chopper and the people who lived
Snake
around
catchers.
that. Yeah. So those are the kids who have grown up there. One of them now works with KPMG here, little girl. Fully, 3 of the kids I've studied in Miranda House. So they've done. So that is where you are when you bring this whole kind of space, or whether it's a small town in Jhalawar, which is Tihar Jail, INA market. All these things were leading me to when I started writing. And like 500 years ago, I had met Robert Saab, right? In that little thing when he was typing Hindi, I'm just getting into at a India Today conference over a cigarette. I met this young man from Bhutan who was doing his a 1-year program at the NDC, the National Defense College. Here he was. So I thought he was an army officer from Bhutan, and great guy. Spoke to him. Next 3 days we sat together with each other over this thing. I introduced myself and he said, I'm Jigme. And, we had this great situation. Then 2-3 weeks later, I called him home for dinner. And that's when I realized that the cops were coming to do the security check of my house. My mom was saying, who's coming here? Turns out that he was the Crown Prince of Bhutan.
And today the king.
And today
Jigme Kesar.
that's a guy. Amazing man.
I was going to come to how did Bhutan happen and right into that. This is how it happened, which is absolutely amazing. And earlier in the year, last year, I beg your pardon, we were in Bhutan. This was my 3rd visit, but the first time I saw what was happening in the area of education initiatives that Arun has done over there, which is absolutely mind-blowing. So we straight away went from the airport to the campus, as it were, and it's a 300-acre campus at 9,000 feet at Pangbisa,
Yep.
and which houses a very impressive zong, which feels as if it's been around for hundreds of years, but it's called the Dunkar zong, the conch, the Dunkar zong. But it's been made only the last 10 years, and Arun's been associated with that. Absolutely state of the art within, smart classrooms, audiovisual resources, auditorial, libraries, you name it, and students from all over the place. That Bhutan story, of course, it also has an education center. It also over there has teacher training, all sorts of initiatives. And over there too, you've been very involved with spearheading or designing the Bhutan Baccalaureate. Tell us about your Bhutan experience.
Yeah, so this is like
It's just been 10, 12 years.
Yeah, yeah. So I was saying that His Majesty the King of Bhutan. I went for a holiday later, and then I met him, and he said for him, education is like the most important. So one of the first few things he did when he became the King of Bhutan was set up something called the Royal Education Council, and that's when he said, "Let me help me with that." So that's how it started. I was still at Vasant Valley School. I used to go there once or twice a year. His vision, in many ways, to take Bhutan to heights, great heights as far as learning is concerned. And there's Guru Padma Sambhava, who's like the guy who brought Buddhism to various parts of Bhutan, of the Himalayan
That region, the Eastern
that
Himalayas.
whole region, and he's also like the patron saint of Bhutan. So he was somebody that we were looking at. And so looking at Guru Padma Sambhava and what he had done, the tiger's nest is right there in Paro, we found this land. And this whole philosophical underpinnings of the Bhutan Baccalaureate are based on Guru Padma Sambhava. So where he traveled, wherever he went, he never tried to force what he was thinking onto him. He just said, whatever you're doing, that's great, add a bit of this. So that's how he kind of, this whole way of getting people to look at what they were doing and making space for something new. So that's just one aspect. The other aspect, which he was very crucial, is that wherever he went and he found a community, and he felt that they had come up to a certain level, but not at the moment in the space to receive some more of his teachings. So then he would hide his treasure there, right? Leaving that some years later, a treasure revealer, Tetron, would come back to reveal the treasure to the society when they were ready to receive it. So that there has now become a very important part of the Bhutan Baccalaureate. We say all of us are born with that treasure. And as we become old enough to understand what that treasure is about, the treasure revealer will come and reveal it to us. And for us, the treasure revealer is the human being themselves. So we help our children grow up to become treasure revealers of the treasure that lives within them.
Become the best that they can be.
The best that they can be. So
realize their potential.
Actualize their potential. So the word we use is actualizing potential.
Actualize, right.
Rather than maximizing that a lot of people, but then it says that there is a maximum there. So actualizing potential through treasure seeking, that's the basic idea. And the other thing which we talk a lot about the Bhutan Baccalaureate is that we felt, again, many years of His Majesty, his own experience, mine, is that we have 5 areas of development. So a lot of schooling has academic and sports. So but we moved, it has to go way beyond. So in 2008 or 2009, we talked about the 5 areas of development. Which are what is cerebral, not academic. Cerebral, way beyond the academic. Cerebral is there. Physical, of course, is there. Then there's spiritual, emotional, and social. So all these things need to help a child grow up. So that is the difference, that we're not looking at it as a schooling situation. We are looking as to how to help the child to grow up, to be what? And this is again, to become a constructive, contributory citizen of a just and harmonious society. This is the true purpose of education. But wherever you are, if you grow up to become a constructive, contributory citizen of your community, what else is there for education? That's your whole job of becoming a constructive contributory. And this idea of a just and harmonious society, this phrase comes from His Majesty. And juxtaposition these 2 words is not easy. No. A just society and a harmonious society, like wow. Yeah. But that's the aim that His Majesty has.
That's the vision.
That's the vision. So that is what this Bhutan Baccalaureate, the 5 areas of development. uh, going towards a constructive contributory citizenship is very important. When we do this through roadmaps, so you need to see me as a student, as a teacher, as a school, have your own roadmap. Where do you want to go? You put down your indicators of success in all these 5 areas of development. And how do you move forward? By learning skills, getting the skills to become a process in who you are. And then through that process, you develop watermarks that makes you authentic you. So skills, processes and watermarks is a watermark of the Bhutan Baccalaureate. That in all the things that you do, you figure out, we've been using technology. We've just finished a huge discussion on the role of artificial intelligence in education. So for us, again, our AI, which everybody calls artificial intelligence, for us, AI means something very different. Which is that means for us, AI is augmented intelligence. Rather than just going and outsourcing all our learning and everything to the machine, use the machine to augment our intelligence.
Quite right.
So that
Collaborative way. Yeah.
collaborative way. So that for us, AI is through there actualizing your potential. These are now things that are living. And so the Bhutan Baccalaureate in Bhutan, there are 20 districts. In each of the districts, there is a Bhutan Baccalaureate school. So we've been working there for the last 2-3 years these are running schools, government schools in Bhutan. Again, education is free and high quality education. Means there's no such thing as a private doctor in Bhutan.
Is that right?
Yeah. There's no such thing. So wherever you go, there'll be a BHU, a basic health unit. They can't deal with it. They'll take you to the next hospital. And even if you have to go outside the country for something, the government supports that.
Wow.
The same thing is with the school. There are a few private schools, but not many. Most of them are government schools. 90% are government schools, and they're doing really well. So that's where this Bhutan Baccalaureate was designed from Bhutan, but not only for Bhutan. It was designed to even go outside. So that's the stage we are in with the Bhutan Baccalaureate. Just now, there is this Gelefo Mindfulness City that His Majesty is putting up, and that's a huge vision for His Majesty to come up with. We're going to be setting up a similar school like the one that you visited in Gelefo. But that's going to be for international students.
So they can come from
all over the world.
What you've done with the Royal Academy there, co-educational, residential, and students from all over Bhutan is just so impressive. We were really impressed with what we saw of the students themselves and how you're putting it together. The implementation has been quite rapid. But what you've also personally achieved, Arun, to actualize that vision has been quite remarkable. And very recently, he was honored by being conferred the title of Dasho. Have I pronounced it right? I hope so.
Absolutely.
Given a royal scarf and a sword presented over there in a huge auditorium over there. But that's an opportunity you've made. You've done wonderful things with, and I think congratulations for that.
Yeah, I'm just still completely overwhelmed. His Majesty in his wisdom, or his quirky sense of humor. He's given me this, and yeah, it's just, I mean, I can't still, it happened just less than a month ago. And yeah, I think it also wakes you up in so many ways. It puts different kind of responsibilities on you. So we've got a journey, and there's so much more to do.
You know, the concluding section of this podcast is something that we call What's the Buzz? Okay, but I'm going to do a sort of rapid take on it. I'm going to throw some buzzwords at you, and you give me your quick response to each one of those.
Okay.
All right?
Fair enough.
Now, what's the buzz, Arun Kapur? Artificial intelligence in education.
We feel as human beings, we are at the top of the evolution change, but we are not. We've just been there like a flash of a pan. So what is the next evolutionary step? Is it these machines who are going to over-evolve over us? But they cannot be anything other than part of our evolution, the change, the growth. That is where my reaction to artificial intelligence is
Augmented intelligence. All right. Assessment and learning.
For me, again, going back to the Ter and Guru Padmasambha, I have to assess myself. Where am I? What do I need to learn? I might use somebody else to help me understand where I am, and then help me understand what my next step is. That Can't do it without assessment. I mean, assessment, unfortunately, for a lot of people becomes a bad word. For me, it's the buzzword.
Right. Purpose of education.
Purpose of education is to always do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and to help you become the constructive contributory citizen of any community that you're part of. That's it, to bring the best out of you and always understand your best is still ahead.
That's your spin on what Japanese might call ikigai. Mindfulness city.
Visionary, forward looking, mind blowing, an opportunity in this part of the world. Nothing, of course, it's based in Bhutan, but I think it's going to change a lot of what's happening in the next 4 or 5 years. And because it's very clearly that this city is going to go up, but it's going to carry with it all the other boats with Assam and India. I think India will benefit a lot from the kind of stuff that's going to happen.
It's envisioned, from what I understood, as really an international center and a global center in its own way, but with mindfulness at the center.
Very clearly a Buddhist thinking Vajrayana city, where all your definite, the good instincts in a human being come to the fore, but you have to be part of the world.
Entrepreneurship in schools.
Entrepreneurship is again a way of being who you are, being able to use the opportunity that you get that is thrown at you very often, right? To be able to think beyond just being dependent on somebody else. So it goes back into standing on your own feet. You might not always become an entrepreneur, but think like an entrepreneur. Make do with what you call. That's what entrepreneurs do. They make do with all that is at their disposal and come up with something fantastic.
Final buzz on learning centers.
So with the second chance school, what was happening was there were kids coming in from all over the country going here. They were doing very well, but they were not going back. And that had been the idea before also, that they would go back and do stuff for their community. So what we're doing with this is going to continue, the second chance school, but we are going into smaller villages, little smaller towns, and setting up learning centers there. And these learning centers are going to be repositories of local knowledge. And we're going to collect medicine and agriculture and song and dance and music, way of thinking in all these places. And then bring in high-end science and technology to take this local knowledge to a high end, and they should talk to each other. So same way, these smaller places will rise up because of the people from there, right? That makes a big difference. So these learning centers are going to be by the people from that area to take their communities up. The power of technology, the power of artificial intelligence, the power of actually augmenting your intelligence in these little communities to take the learning centers to become catalysts in that.
Wow, right. So that's the buzz, according to Arun Kapur, lifelong educator. You know, Arun, it's been a fantastic chat. From your journey as a teacher to your groundbreaking initiatives in education, you've left us with so much to chew on, think about, reflect on, and aspire towards. With people like you, Arun, education becomes not just a rite of passage, but a movement. So thank you for joining us, and to our listeners, remember, education isn't just about classrooms, it's about life. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep growing.